Welcome to our information session for the 2025 Professional Development Cycle. My name is Sonia Teese. I'm the Manager of Quality Assurance at CRPO, and I'm joined today by my colleagues Madeline Lee, who's the Senior Coordinator in Quality Assurance, and Hannah Petrovic, our Bilingual Assistant. Some housekeeping items before we begin. We've already asked that you keep your video and microphone off. And in addition, if you require closed captioning, you can turn that on by clicking the captions icon, or if that doesn't appear, you might need to tap the More option at the bottom of your screen to access the captions option.
So we will begin with a land acknowledgement. CRPO recognizes that its work takes place across the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations throughout the province, now known as Ontario. This land is covered by 46 treaties and other agreements, reflecting the enduring presence and rights of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. CRPO offices is located in Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa bands.
Thank you, Madeline. This information session is specifically for anyone who is registered in an odd year who will be reporting their professional development activities at the end of the year. In today's session, we will briefly describe all areas of CRPO's QA program that you need to be aware of. However, the main focus will be on the professional development or PD cycle. We will explain what the PD cycle is, what can be included as a professional development activity, how to complete the QA attestation form, and how to request a deferral or an extension. We will also briefly discuss what happens when a registrant does not respond to the college or is non-compliant. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance. We have incorporated those questions into today's presentation, and if there's time, we will do our best to answer questions from the chat. We won't be discussing registration requirements or practice-related questions, but we will provide email addresses at the end of the presentation so you can reach out to the appropriate department. We are recording this session and we'll post the recording and slides on our website. And finally, if you do have a question that's not answered today, we invite you to email us at qa@crpo.ca. All regulated health professionals in Ontario have a responsibility to maintain the necessary knowledge, skill, and judgment, or their ongoing competence, in their profession to provide safe and effective care to Ontarians throughout their careers. And CRPO has a responsibility to establish a quality assurance program and monitor registrant participation in QA activities. The framework that CRPO must abide by in establishing a QA program is set out in the Regulated Health Professions Act and in the Quality Assurance Program Regulation made under the Psychotherapy Act. The Quality Assurance Committee, which is made up of professional members and members of the public, provide oversight of the QA program. The Quality Assurance Committee established the policies that guide how we administer the program. CRPO's QA program promotes continuing competence and assures the public that registered psychotherapists are committed to lifelong learning and providing safe, client-focused care. CRPO's QA program must include these three elements: professional development activities, peer assessment activities, and professional improvement activities. Professional development includes self-assessment and professional development or learning activities, and today's session is focusing on this part of the program. All registrants must also participate in a peer and practice review, or a PPR, approximately once every 5 years. At CRPO, the first stage of a peer and practice review is to complete an online assessment called the Case-Based Assessment, or CBA. Your CBA results determine the outcome and next steps in your peer and practice review. All registrants receive feedback on their CBA performance and can use that information to direct their future professional development. Today, we are in the middle of assessing everyone who registered before December 31st, 2022. So you will be notified when you have been randomly selected to complete the CBA. We won't be discussing the CBA during the session, but if you've been selected for the spring CBA, we will be having a separate information session in the new year. And we also will have an email address for you at the end. And finally, the third component of our QA program is professional improvement, and that includes remediation activities that are directed by the Quality Assurance Committee.
So all registrants must complete professional development or PD activities on an ongoing basis in order to maintain the knowledge, skill, and judgment required to practice the profession. Registrants are responsible for reporting their PD activities to the college every 2 years. This 2-year period is known as the PD reporting cycle. Your PD cycle is determined by your registration year. So registrants who are registered in an odd year will report every odd year, while a registrant registered in an even year will report every even year. The current reporting cycle began on January 1st, 2024, and will end on December 31st, 2025. Following this reporting cycle, your next PD reporting cycle will begin in January and will end on December 31st, 2027. As usual, you'll have a QA reporting deadline at the end of every odd year. So this year, 2025, 2027, 2029, and so on. So before the end of each PD reporting cycle, registrants need to ensure that they have completed the following activities: at least one self-assessment, 40 hours of professional development or learning activities, review training on the duty to report child abuse and neglect. And at the end of the PD cycle, registrants must submit an attestation form in their CRPO account confirming whether they have completed these activities. So we will talk about each requirement in detail in the following slides.
The self-assessment is an online questionnaire that is available to complete at any time in your CRPO user account, and you can access it in the QA tab. The self-assessment is intended to help you reflect on your regulatory responsibilities and identify areas for improvement and inform some of your professional development choices. You can complete more than one self-assessment, and you're encouraged to refer to your answers as you plan your professional development or learning activities. We encourage registrants to complete a new self-assessment whenever there is a significant change in their practice. So for example, if you move from group to private practice, if you change client populations, or if you've recently returned to active practice. Registrants must complete all sections of the self-assessment and provide responses that are complete and related to the subject matter. Ideally, you will complete a new self-assessment at the beginning of each PD cycle to help you identify relevant learning activities that you plan to complete during your PD cycle.
So registrants must complete at least 40 hours of learning activities every PD cycle. Note that at least one of these activities must be didactic, and at least one activity must be experiential. Didactic activities mean that the activity involves a lesson or some kind of learning. Experiential activities means that the activity is based on an experience and observation. So at least once every 2 years as part of the PD cycle, registrants are also required to undertake training on the duty to report child abuse and neglect. The activities must be completed during your PD cycle. This means that any activity completed before January 1st, 2024 cannot be included. Similarly, any activities you complete after December 31st, 2025 cannot count towards your 2025 reporting cycle. Those hours can be counted towards your next PD reporting cycle that ends in 2027. So registrants must document their learning activities in a learning record and retain supporting documentation from each activity in their records. This is known as your professional portfolio. The professional portfolio must include, at minimum, a learning record log and supporting documentation to verify your participation in the learning activities. CRPO does have a template available on our website that we recommend registrants to use, and we sent a link to the template in the chat. Registrants must maintain the records in their professional portfolio for the current and previous reporting cycles, so that is 4 years. And registrants are not required to submit their professional portfolios unless requested by CRPO staff. So here is what the learning record template looks like. As you can see, we ask that registrants keep track of the activity name and the details, the date that the activity was started, and if applicable, the date that it was completed, the number of hours spent on the activity, a description of the activity type, so that is where you would identify the activity as a didactic or experiential activity, and the type of documentation that you have retained for the activity. But most importantly, there is a reflection section that asks you to reflect on the activity and describe the impact the activity had on your practice. The first entry of the template is filled in as an example for your reference.
Registrants often ask us what activities can be counted as professional development. It's important to note that the college does not require registrants to engage in pre-approved activities. You are in the best position to identify your own learning needs and opportunities for growth and invest in activities that will allow you to meet those objectives. Paid workshops also do not qualify, paid work does not qualify as a professional development activity. Professional development activities must be undertaken for the express purpose of professional growth and learning. A learning activity can be counted if it meets the criteria listed on this slide. The learning activity must be relevant to the practice of the profession, credible, and verifiable. So by credible, we mean that the activity was offered by a credible source. For example, the institution offering the event or the books or journals reviewed are considered credible among your professional colleagues. And verifiable means that there is a way to confirm that an event has taken place. So some type of documentation or contact information so the college could call the organization and verify that an event took place. This slide has a list of examples of learning activities and acceptable supporting documentation. This table is also included in the learning record template that we shared in the chat. The learning record template is also available on our website on the quality assurance page if you don't have a chance to save it from the chat. Some examples of didactic activities include education or training programs, engaging in self-study or self-guided learning, and studying for the CRPO registration exam or preparing for the CBA. Examples of experiential activities include participating in a study group, attending a peer circle, receiving clinical supervision or peer consultation, and writing the registration exam or writing the CBA itself. We also wanted to highlight this particular requirement for everyone. Registrants are required to review training to ensure they are familiar with the requirements on the enhanced duty to report child abuse and neglect. This could be in the form of self-directed learning or an appropriate course or webinar. Again, as we noted earlier, the college does not require that registrants engage in pre-approved activities. You can rely on your own judgment to select a learning activity that meets your individual learning needs on this particular topic. We do have a list of suggested resources available on our website for you to consider. And I believe Hannah just put a link to those resources in the chat. Thanks, Hannah. You should keep relevant documentation about this training, as you do with all of your professional development activities, in your professional development portfolio.
So moving on to your reporting requirements. At the end of each PD cycle, registrants must let the college know that they have completed all of their PD requirements. So that is all the requirements that we have discussed so far by completing an attestation form in your CRPO account. This form became available in your CRPO account on November 1st, and you must complete it by December 31st, 2025. You'll be able to locate the attestation on the dashboard when you log into your CRPO account. So we have an example of what it looks like currently on the slide. There will be a yellow button titled QA Attestation. Simply click on the button to access your attestation. Please be sure to complete the attestation in full and click Submit at the end of the form. When you have successfully completed your attestation, the button will disappear from your dashboard. So here's what the attestation looks like in your CRPO account after you have clicked the button. Please be sure to read the attestation carefully and select yes or no from the drop-down box to whether you have met your requirements and click Next. After you click Next, you will be taken to the last page of the attestation. Please read the statements carefully and be sure to click each box in the attestation and then click Submit.
If you need to request an extension or a deferral of your PD requirements, you can do this through the attestation form. So on the first page of the attestation, you would need to select No to access the extension and deferral request form, and staff will follow up on your request and confirm if you've been granted a deferral or extension or if we require more information from you. An extension provides you with an additional 60 days to complete your PD activities. You can use those 60 days to either complete the self-assessment or complete any remaining activities you need to reach 40 hours. A deferral allows you to defer your requirements to the next PD cycle. It's important to note that if you receive a deferral, you must report all of your PD hours for the current and previous reporting cycle. So that means you would be reporting 80 hours over 4 years. And as outlined in our QA program policies, an extension cannot exceed 60 days and a deferral cannot exceed 1 reporting cycle, which is 2 years. Extension or deferral from requirements related to QA program components may be granted for the following reasons, and we've highlighted the items that apply specifically to the PD cycle. So personal illness, if you're practicing or if you're not practicing due to a parental leave for 1 year or more during a PD reporting cycle, if you're pending resignation within the 4 months following the reporting cycle deadline, illness of an immediate family member or where the registrant is the primary caregiver, bereavement, and personal crisis or other extenuating circumstances that impact a registrant's ability to cope with additional responsibilities. So just very quickly going over the technical side of how to do this. To request a deferral, you need to select No on the attestation form and then click Next. That will bring you to the extension, the deferral and extension form. You have to complete all of the questions in full and then again click Next. And then again, you'll be taken to the same last page of the attestation form where you'll need to click all the checkboxes and then click Submit. And before we move on to the question and answer section of our presentation, we wanted to briefly mention something about what happens when a registrant doesn't respond to the college. Before any QA deadline, staff send reminders via email, and we do our best to balance the number of communications we send, and we try to alert registrants when they have an action to take. After a QA deadline has passed, staff continue to follow up and send reminders, but those reminders might have a fee attached, and ultimately, if the fee is not paid and the attestation remains incomplete, a registrant could receive an administrative suspension. And that just means it's administrative, not punitive. So all you need to do is pay the fee and complete the requirement, and then the suspension is lifted. The PD deadline is purposely set for December 31st to avoid overlapping with registration renewal deadlines at the end of March. And so for that reason, we encourage everyone to complete their QA reporting requirements on time to avoid running into overlapping deadlines with their registration renewal.
So now we'll be answering some of the questions that were submitted to us in advance. So our first question is, what supporting documentation do we need to retain for activities? What about self-study activities like reading a book, etc.? So ideally, a supporting document is a letter or a certificate of completion, even if an official document is not available. So for example, for activities involving self-study and self-guided learning, registrants can create their own record of the activity in a journal. For example, we would accept any documentation that lists the following. So an activity name and details, the organization's name and contact information, date or period in which the activity occurred, the specific number of hours spent engaging in the activity, and most significantly, reflection and any notable changes that were made to your practice as a result of the activity. You are encouraged to use CRPO's PD templates that we shared earlier to ensure that all necessary information is being documented in your learning record. And also please note that it is not necessary for you to purchase C credit options or purchase official certificates for workshops or seminars. Registrants can use email confirmations or any other document that may include the required information that we discussed.
Our next question is, can receiving clinical supervision count towards PD learning activity hours? And the answer is yes. Hours receiving clinical supervision can count towards your PD hours as an experiential activity. The hours must have occurred during the reporting cycle. So again, that's after January 1st, 2024 and before December 31st, 2025.
Our next question is, can activities currently in progress count towards my hours? So you can count the number of hours that you have completed for the activity. A course does not need to be completed to be counted as a PD learning activity. So for example, if a course is 20 hours long and you have only completed 10 hours during your reporting cycle, you may count the 10 hours that you have completed. You cannot count any hours that you anticipate completing.
One person asked, I've been told by others that certain activities, especially within solo study, such as reading a book, can only account for a certain number of PD hours. Is there a breakdown or a chart about this? And CRPO does not put limits on the number of hours an activity could count towards your PD hours. We only require that you participate in at least one didactic and at least one experiential activity. We do encourage registrants to participate in a wide variety of activities and select activities that would best address their individual learning needs.
Our next question is, do I need to keep track of PD hours beyond the 40 hours? So the minimum requirement during each PD cycle is to complete at least 40 hours of learning activities. You are welcome to document your activities beyond the 40 hours if you wish to do so.
What is the difference or overlap between professional development and currency hours? So it's important to understand that PD learning or professional development learning activities are different from direct client contact hours and from currency hours. Registrants often confuse currency requirements with their PD requirements. So your PD or professional development or learning activities are part of your quality assurance program requirements, while currency hours relate to your registration requirements. Professional development or learning activities can be used as currency hours, but not all currency hours qualify as learning activities. The definition of currency can be found on our definitions page on our website, and Hannah, thank you, has kindly put the link to the definitions document in our chat for you.
So our next question is it considered acceptable to repeat a course, for example, doing the same course on a modality in the name of reviewing? So RPs are self-regulated health professionals and are in the best position to determine their learning needs. If you feel it would be beneficial to repeat a training, you can do so. Be sure to include the training on your learning record and reflect on the activity. RPs are encouraged to engage in a wide variety of activities and select activities that would best address your individual learning needs. And at this time, we would also like to encourage registrants to focus some of your professional development hours on your regulatory obligations. So this would include things like reviewing CRPO's professional practice standard, reviewing the jurisprudence manual, reading the Practice Matters articles, and watching previously recorded CRPO town halls, as well as learning more about the laws that govern your practice, such as the Personal Health Information Protection Act and the Healthcare Consent Act.
We often get the question, can volunteer work be counted towards PD learning activities? And again, the answer to that is it depends. PD learning activities must be an activity undertaken for the express purpose of your professional growth and learning. So if an activity is part of your job responsibilities, whether they're paid or not, then they can't be counted towards your professional development.
So our next question is, can preparation for the CBA or writing the CBA count towards PD learning activity hours? So yes, the hours spent preparing for the CBA can count towards your PD hours as a didactic activity. Hours spent writing the CBA can count as an experiential activity. However, these hours must have occurred during your reporting cycle. So for this time, it would be after January 1st, 2024, and before December 31st, 2025. But we don't have a specific number of hours registrants can count for these activities. Please just report your time honestly on your learning record. And again, we encourage registrants to complete a wide variety of activities.
So that brings us to the end of our presentation.